Hi folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today we are going to be making spiky lupin flowers. I'm going to be making the pink version in 3 different colors here of pink quilling paper. They're all 1/8 inch wide, but you can use the width of your choice. I'm going to be using a little bit of mint green as well, and then for the stems and the leaves I have lime green, so a little bit brighter for that. I'll go over the exact colors of those a little bit later, and as always I leave the links in my description box for everything I use. You can use whatever quilling tool you prefer, either a needle or slotted tool. You might want to grab some tweezers. If you really want to follow along with the measurements, grab yourself a ruler. As far as glue goes, I'm going to be using Elmer's Glue All in my needle nose bottle for the individual pieces, and then putting it all together with some tacky glue. And we're going to be mounting these directly today. So you can use whatever you like to mount. You can use a mat board. I am going to be using watercolor paper because I'm going to be building this on a base of watercolor painting. And you can see this is a really basic set I actually bought for my kids but then swiped it. So you can use whatever watercolor you like. You're going to need some water, then obviously a paintbrush, and a pencil if you want to kind of sketch out exactly what you're going to be doing. And if you're not familiar with lupin flowers, they are tall. They're sort of like elongated cone shapes. They start off with darker petals on the bottom and get lighter towards the top and even a little bit of green. We are going to be slightly changing the shape of our flower when we're done, making it just a little bit more squished, mostly to fit on this 5x7 paper. But of course you can change the size and scale if you like. Now I'm starting this on a colorful base, like I said, similar to the idea of the peony video I made a while back, where the flower has a lot of dimension to it and a lot of petals, and instead of making every individual petal, we're using a colorful base to sort of give the idea of the 3-dimensional effect, to make it look like there's more petals than we're actually making. So to start with, I just drew out the basic line that I want my flower and my stem to go in, that little arc of pencil. Then erase it as much as I could. I don't want it to show through the watercolor. I can still see it. You can't really see it on camera, but I can see it in real life. And I am starting at what's going to be the base of my flower, making sort of an arced cone shape. And like I said, I'm kind of squishing it down a little bit, so it's not going to be as long and elegant as the lupin flower. It's just going to be a little bit more of a shorter cone shape. And I'm just brushing my paint towards the end here. I'm not using a ton of water and I'm not using a ton of paint. Even if you have a nice thick watercolor paper like I have here, if you use a lot of water, your paper will get wrinkly, and that might make adding the quilling a little bit tricky. So I'm just doing enough paint that I can see the color without adding a lot of moisture. And then just a little bit of green at the top, just to add the effect of the little green petals that are going to be at the top of the flower. And then increasing the color at the bottom, because that is where the flower is going to be the darkest. So adding more down at the bottom, pushing that towards the top. There we go. You don't have to use watercolor for this if you're not comfortable. You can use marker, you could use colored pencil or pastel. You don't have to use any color at all if you don't want to. Just always fun to do a new technique. And with watercolor, another thing you can do is if you feel like you have too much color in some place, you can blot some of that away with a dry paper towel. All of that is okay. You could also tape down your paper to a surface if you are afraid of a lot of wrinkles. That is a pretty common technique for watercolor. I didn't do it today because it's just a very small painting. Now I am adding just a little bit more of that green to where my stem is going to be. And then we didn't talk too much in the reference photo part about the leaves for the lupin, but they are sort of little spikes that kind of radiate in a circle. So I'm just adding some directly below my flower bud and then coming off another little stem to the side there just to kind of balance everything out, but you can put your leaves wherever you like. And that is pretty much it for my little underpainting of my flower here. You can add more, you can again make these different sizes. That is up to you. But now we're going to go ahead and move along to our next step, which is going to be making the stems and the pieces of our leaves. If you followed me for a while, you've seen the way I make stems most of all, which is making thicker strips. This is lime green. Here from Quilt Creations, it's going to be the same color that I use for the stems and the leaves. So if you've seen this, feel free to fast forward for the next minute or two. I am going to be folding my paper in half and adding some glue from the halfway mark all the way down to the end. You don't want any gaps in your glue because that will make little air bubbles in your strip and you don't want that. But you don't need a lot of glue either. So just a very, very thin line all the way from the middle point to the end, and then fold it back up and wring that through your fingers in every direction. Just make sure it's nice and smooth. If you have a thicker paper that you like to use, like a cardstock or something you'd traditionally use on edge for quilling, you can always use that as well. But if you just have one type of paper, this is how you would make it nice and sturdy. Now you're going to let that dry and do it all over again. So we're making a quadruple thick strip this time. So same thing, fold it in half, add the glue, and run it through your fingers. We are just going to speed along this part, but I think you probably get the picture for that. And now we're going to be making our leaves. We're not making the entire leaves all together. We're going to be making just the little segments of leaves, and then when we're putting them on our final surface, it'll all come together. So you're going to need different sizes of strips. I would say make some that are about 4 inches, make some that are about 6. If you want bigger leaves, you can make a little bit larger pieces. And all it is rolling from end to end on your tool, letting it open up a bit, and then smushing both ends. We're making little marquees here. We're not smushing down the middle, just smushing on the ends. So there's one side and there's the other. Glue the end down to get that set. And there we go. We need some that are teeny tiny and some that are a little bit longer. And depending on the perspective of your leaf, you might need more, you might be less. I'll show when I put it all together with my flower in a bit. Now we are getting on to the actual flower, and I'm using 3 different colors of pink here. It's going to be darker on the bottom and get a bit lighter as it gets to the top. So starting with the bottom of the lupin flower, we are using this rose color for the darkest shade, and I'm going to be making multiple teardrops in various sizes. So some are going to be about 6 inches long, some are going to be about 5 inches long. And that's just to vary it up a little bit, just to make it look a little bit more lifelike. Not every single petal on this flower is going to be exactly the same. So this is very basic teardrop shapes. Roll it on your tool from end to end, let it open up a bit and pinch one end. That is your teardrop. Some of them are going to stay teardrops and some of them are going to curve slightly. So you're going to grab your tool, bend the pointed end around your handle. You could do this around your finger as well if you'd like to. And I'm going to be doing basically the same thing in the 3 different colors of pink. So I have my rose, I have my standard pink there, and I have light pink. And I made about 10 to 12 of each color, but they get progressively smaller. So the pink in the middle is about 5 to 4 inches, and then the pink on the end, the real pale one, is between maybe 4 and 3 inches in each little piece there, maybe even a couple of 2-inch strips. And then I have the mint green, and I'm going to be making between 5 and 6 of this same shape. These are about 2-inch strips. Same thing, just little tiny little teardrops. Just roll it on my tool and then pinch one end. Tiny. That's going to be the very peak of my lupin flower. Let me mention also before I go on, I know there are very different ways of saying the name of this flower. I know some people say lupine and some people say lupine. I know it is lupin. I know. I just know that that might come up later. So here's all my pieces. I have my biggest teardrops and then getting smaller as I go. I have my stem. I have my leaves. I have a little bit of tacky glue here. I have some tweezers and my underpainting is dry. I'm going to start with the largest and the darkest of the teardrops and I'm going to work my way up. And it's just a matter of playing around with your pieces here and getting them where you think they look the best. These are just acting as the petals of the flower. What I ended up doing for the first layer here on the bottom is just doing 4. Tried to get the largest of my teardrops, have them curve from the outside, so that's where those curved teardrops come in. And then the middle 2 are sort of in a heart shape. So having them all kind of point in towards the bottom gives the idea of this sort of rounded bottom. And then for the next layer, I'm looking for the ones that are maybe a little bit smaller. And again, the sides are going to curve in. And then I'm going to kind of make them a little bit straighter as they get towards the middle. Because if you were looking at this flower straight on, the middle petals would look like they're just straight up and down, but the ones on the side would look a little bit more curved in. And I also am going to add a little bit of variation with the color. I'm going to sort of introduce that lighter color in this layer by adding just one of the petals. Now you can lay out your entire flower and make sure you like how it looks before you glue anything down. I'm going to glue at this point on the second layer because I know myself and I know that I will keep knocking my petals around if I don't just start gluing them at this point. My hands are not steady enough to put the entire thing down without knocking this right off my table at some point. I know that about myself. So I have my tacky glue here and you can just apply right to the back side of your petals, or you can do a little bit of the dip method, which I think I'm going to end up doing for this in a moment. You don't have to use tacky glue for this project. You can use whatever glue you like. As long as your paper is dry from that underpainting, it will work just fine. But you can see I've already started knocking some of my petals loose. I knew it. So let's get those first 2 layers down and we will move on to our next layer. I have a little bit more of the dark rose that I'm going to lay down here, but I'm going to add even more of that medium pink. And pretty much in the same design as that second layer, curved in from the sides and then getting more straight towards the center. So there's the straight one and more curved here. And at this point I am dipping it right into the glue. I have a little bit on some wax paper to the side there. Definitely easier and faster than having to pick up the glue every time. And then we're going to keep going in this fashion, making our petals smaller as we get towards the top and adding in the other color as we get towards the top as well. And this is why we added more of the paint towards the bottom of the flower to reflect that darker pink on the bottom of the flower. at this point, I am on the smallest and lightest color petals. They're still sort of in the same formation where they're curved around the sides and a little bit straighter in the center. And I have added some of the lightest pink to the medium pink layers so that it sort of all blends together and you're not just getting straight lines of color right across. And at this point, I'm going to start kind of getting more of that cone point on the top. So my petals are going to be a little bit less of a straightish line going across. I'm going to kind of mix it up just a little bit, add a little bit less of the petal shapes. Even though they're so small, I'm going to have only 4 in this row. And whoops, get that a little bit better there. There we go. And get this one on the outside actually. There we go. Even though you're using tacky glue, you still have a couple seconds of wiggle room here. If you have something that you don't 100% like, you can move it. It's okay. I'm gathering my mint green, tiniest little petals. And we're going to sort of start getting those on there as well. I know the mint green top and the lime green bottom might sound a little wacky. It might not seem like it goes together, but it actually does look really pretty when it's all done. If you don't prefer either of those greens, you can obviously do whatever you'd like. Now I'm going to add just a little bit of the pink where the green is. Again, we don't want just solid bands of color, just to make this look a little bit more organic. So a little bit of pink where the green is, and then just a couple more right in the peak of my cone. One more. Okay, one more. I could have stopped there, but I think it needs just one more right at the tippy. There we go. That is about it for the flower part of our project today. Now we're going to really quickly add on the stem and the leaves, and we've already made them, so this isn't going to take long at all. I have my quadruple thick little pieces here and all my little pieces of my leaves. Get everybody over here. There we go. And I have a really slight curve to my stem there. So I'm just going to run it through my fingers for a second and I'm going to mark off how long I need it to be. That's about that. And because this is nice and thick, it's going to stand up pretty easily with the tacky glue. So I'm just dipping off to the side here and then tapping off any excess. There we go. Quilling really doesn't need a lot of glue at all to set, even on this watercolor paper. And it's okay if you see the green painting underneath or however you did your coloring. That's sort of the point of this style. So don't be afraid if your stem isn't exactly on the line. That is totally fine and expected. This little piece to the side there. It's gonna have our little leaf guy attached to it. That's fine. And tap, tap, tap off to the side. Okay. Get that to set for a second. And then we are just going to put some leaf pieces around our leaf painting. Again, it's not going to line up exactly because we sort of just guessed earlier where things were going to land. So you will still see some of the leaf painting underneath, just like I mentioned with the stem, and that's, again, fine. That's the point. So here's just a couple pieces of the leaf kind of coming from the underneath of the flower. It would almost act like it's coming from behind the flower. That's why it's not the full leaf shape. So kind of get them lined up where you think is right, and then add some glue, and then we're going to do the same thing to the other leaf. And we're going to add just a little bit more to that bottom leaf. And that's about that. There is our flower all completed. Let that dry and you can frame it if you like. You can do whatever you'd like with it. Bit more of a close-up here where you can see still the painting underneath. It's subtle, but again, it makes it look like there are more petals than there really are. Here is a version with 2 flowers, a purple, same idea, used a dark kind of a grape color towards the bottom, a more standard purple in the middle, and then a lighter lilac-y type color towards the top, still with that same mint green there as well. You can do these in any composition you wish. I'm a big fan of just kind of solo, straightforward flowers instead. That's just me, but I'm sure you will find a lovely way to make these flowers and display them and share them. As always, if you have any questions, please leave those in the comment section. I'll answer those as soon as I can. And I also always leave links to all the tools and supplies I use in the description box. You'll also find a link to my Buy Me a Coffee page that you can see here, where you can find some ways to get some quilling extras, which is a great way to support the channel and keeps it growing week after week, and it really allows me to be able to keep making these videos, and it's always greatly, greatly appreciated. You guys are amazing. I hope you find something you like there. There's a couple new things coming out this week as well. As always, be kind to each other, look out for your neighbors. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be around for my next video, and I will see you then. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.